Good morning, everybody.
Oh, we were
Look at you all.
So many people showed up.
Yeah, well, the Prime Minister's here because he doesn't know what time it is.
Okay.
He just got back from Japan.
Right, that makes sense.
He has no idea. Thank you for being here, Mr. Prime Minister. It's great to see all of you here.
It is so great, and it's such an honor to be sitting here with you. So let me jump in, because we only have 25 minutes, and we have a gazillion things to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about the Wild Rose incident, the apology. Do you accept their apology?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting place to start, because in this conversation about women in politics and inclusion, we have to pay attention to what's going on around us, right? I point to what Rona Ambrose is saying about how you're supposed to be the partner of a prime minister. Like, what are the rules about, do you stay behind? Are you quiet? Do you stand in front of the camera? And my experience of being a woman, I could put a period there, or a comma, or being a woman in politics, is that you bump up against rules that you didn't even know were there, you know? And so you kind of have to figure out, what is this rule that is being laid on me, and how am I supposed to respond to that? So in the question about Wild Rose, yes, I accept the apology, but you know, I think that it was an interesting confluence of things. There's a woman premier in Alberta. I'm there as a woman. We're talking about climate change. And I think the attack, the viciousness of the attack had a particular quality to it. Right. So I will just say we need to pay attention to that.
Right. And so I mean, I have two questions. Basically, do you think that it would have happened to you if you were a man? But also, do you think that a woman in politics would have done that? Do you think that the standard is sort of different?
I think the standards are different. I think that the expectation of behavior is different. Are there vicious women in politics? Yes. I mean, that's just a reality. I would hope, certainly in Ontario, any visiting dignitary would be treated differently. I would hope that there would be a different tone. I'm not sure that I can extrapolate and say that would never happen. Right. I suspect it wouldn't have, but you know, you just can't predict.
Right. Did you expect this? I mean, did you expect that being in politics would be this difficult, or that there would be so many challenges?
Well, you know, I didn't run for provincial office until I was 50. So I actually had seen a fair bit of life and had watched, and so I did understand that it was a challenging game. I knew that my skin was going to have to be thick. My skin was pretty thick. You know, the challenge in politics is to have thick enough skin but not be impervious to critique, you know, to let in what you need to let in and be able to push back the stuff that is just critical and is just negative and is not going to lead to anything good. So I think I was prepared for that, but I don't think until you're in it, you can actually understand what that actually feels like in the morning to get up and be afraid to look at the newspaper. You know, what am I going to see in the newspaper? Again, I go to the very subtle things, and again, this is the women's stuff. I was talking with Rachel Notley, and I don't know, some of you may have seen the National Post article about the height of the premiers in the country. Did you see that? Subtle, but guess what? The women are the shortest.
Biologically.
I'm stunned that the women are the shortest. We happen to have fairly tall premiers right now. Brian Pallister's, I don't know, 6'8". I'm going to meet him today. The pictures are going to be ridiculous. But the point is, why focus on that? Why does Rachel Notley have to explain that being 5'2" is okay? Right. She can still be a strong politician. I'm 5'4". Okay, I can still be a strong person and be 5'4". I know it's subtle and it sounds trivial, but that's the kind of thing that kind of seeps in, and you spend some time trying to overcome that, right? I can only wear heels that are so high.
Right. Like, before you fall down.
Exactly.
So, do we need more women in politics?
Absolutely.
Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Because all that starts to go away, when there are enough of us that they can't categorize and they can't say, you know, this is what the women in politics are like, when there are enough of us, and the Prime Minister has led the way on that. 50% of the cabinet is just an awesome, awesome achievement. And here's why it's awesome. It's awesome because it was 2015, it's 2016, and it was time. That makes it awesome. But from my perspective, what really makes it awesome is that the conversation at the table is different. What we know, and I know there are lots of equal voice folks in the room, the number of women at a table, whether it's a board of directors or whether it's a cabinet table or whether it's a caucus table, means that the issues that are talked about are different. The decisions that are made are different. I'll use our sexual assault and violence action plan in Ontario. I've had members of my caucus who have been in politics for a long time, who are men, come up to me and say, we would not have done that if it had not been for women in leadership. That just would not have happened. And I believe that because, I was telling you backstage, the precipitating event for me for that policy was sitting around a table with my minister responsible for women's issues, Tracy McCharles, with a group of young women from colleges and universities, talking to me 2016, 2015, 2016, talking to me about not being able to get to the table where the decisions were being made on their campuses about sexual violence, sexual harassment policies, not being part of the conversation. And I had to be held into my seat because I'm 63. We were having that conversation 45 years ago. Enough. Right. Enough. We should not be having those discussions anymore. So having people at the table who have lived experience in those issues. And so that's why having women at the table is important. That's why having people from different backgrounds, different linguistic, different cultural, different heritage, having those people at the table is important, because that lived experience informs the decisions that we make. And so the issues that have been traditionally women's issues or ethnic issues become human issues. They become Canadian issues, they become Ontario issues, and we have to tackle them. That's why what the Prime Minister has done is so important.
Right. And we talk about women's issues, but women are a majority of the population, and these are not niche issues. It's issues like poverty. Economics is so related to women's welfare.
Well, that's a great comment, because what I would say is that it's one and the same thing. I wouldn't say poverty is related to economics. I'd say the discussion about the economy has to be about all of that. And I think traditionally or historically we've said, let's deal with the economy. Let's make sure we create jobs and we get our books balanced and all of those economic metrics are in place. And then we'll deal with poverty, and then we'll deal with childcare, and then we'll deal with hunger. Not how it works. Yeah. People's lived experience of the economy is whether they can put food on the table, whether they've got someone to look after their kids, whether they can pay for their kids to go to post-secondary. That's what the economy is. So all of that work that we have to do to create jobs and grow the economy is about making sure people's quality of life is as good as it can be. I can't separate those.
Right. And I want to talk about these rumors about your cabinet shakeup. According to sources, you would want your cabinet to be less old, tired, and gray. And I'm quoting.
Yeah, I know you're quoting. You're not quoting me.
No, the source.
You're quoting the source, the disembodied source.
Wherever they are.
Yeah. So, I think that there's always a time in government for renewal, and in a hypothetical cabinet shuffle, I've got a lot of talent to choose from, and so I'm going to be looking for people who have got great ideas to bring to the table. And as I said, luckily I've got a lot of good talent in my cabinet now, and great talent in my caucus. It is the hardest thing, and I know people in this room know this. It is the hardest thing that a leader has to do, is to choose among the great people in her caucus to put into cabinet. Because the reality is, when I go into my caucus meetings on Tuesdays, I'm listening very, very hard to everyone in my caucus.
Right.
And so those voices inform everything that we do at the cabinet table. So, you know, in the hypothetical cabinet shuffle, we'd be looking for just a change in that talent, not a devaluing of some and a valuing over of others, but just making sure that we've got everybody being able to bring their voice to the table where they will be heard.
Right.
And I will just say, you know, experience is not a bad thing. You know, it can be called age,
right?
But experience, as a 63-year-old, I'm just saying, it can be a good thing, that life experience.
Well, what do you think young people can bring to the table?
Oh, an enormous amount. I mean, it's so important that we have young voices. I'm encouraged by how our party federally and provincially is bringing young people in. If for no other reason than, as has been the case through history, we need to be pushed. We need to be shaken up. You know, we need to have our assumptions checked and pushed. And so it's extremely important that young people be with us. I think the specific moment that we're in means that young people now have grown up with a different experience of technology, a different experience of work and how the world is going to function, what their connectivity is going to be. And much as we will try, those of us who are of an older generation, we cannot really understand what it means to have grown up with that kind of technology and connectivity. So we better have those voices at the table, and we better understand what their expectations are. And so it's extremely important to have them with us.
Right. Would you like to have a gender equal cabinet?
I would. You know, I will just say, I know I'm going to be pushed very hard, Prime Minister, on this. Thank you very much. And that's a good thing. We have to recognize that you have to look at the numbers, you have to look at the experience, you have to look at the regions, and you know, I will do my best to have representation from around the province, experience, gender, all of those things. And if I fall short, I will continue to try. I promise.
I mean, it's been, I mean, to commend the Prime Minister, that had international ripple effects. I mean, that question became a question that was asked to Donald Trump, to, you know, American politicians.
And yeah, and I'm sure he had a really good answer.
Yeah, he had a great answer. He always has great answers.
Yes.
They're great. They're, you know, they're the best. They're the
Lucky
best.
you to get to cover that.
Get to listen to all of them every single day. So yeah, but still to be pressed on that issue is not something that would have been mainstream, you know, even a couple of months ago. So
so what's important is that the conversation is out in the public realm. It is something that everyone understands has to be an aspiration, and we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention to who those voices are at all of our tables.
Right. And something else that the Prime Minister will be doing is attending the Gay Pride Parade in Toronto for the first time. As the Prime Minister will be doing it for the first time.
So he's been there.
Yes.
Let's just be clear.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's just be clear.
Yeah.
Our Prime Minister is not going to the Pride Parade because he's now the Prime Minister.
Right.
He's been there before, and he's been a supporter, and thank you.
Never went to the Gay Pride Parade. Do you think he was just busy for 10 years? Like every weekend it just happened to be like, I can't make it. I just can't.
He had other things to do.
Yeah, he has other things to do.
Yeah.
Why is it important for the Prime Minister to be attending this year?
I think because it is well, first of all, I think it's important because Prime Minister Trudeau, before he was the Prime Minister, was supportive, and I think it's important for the community to understand that that wasn't a political ploy, that it was what he believes, and that he's going to continue to show up. I think that's critical. Is that the Pride Parade, for those of you who have been to Pride Parades, you know that they are celebrations of diversity. They are celebrations of LGBTQI, all those letters that I get wrong, the plus. they're celebrations of our community, but they're celebrations of diversity. They're celebrations of inclusion. The floats and the participants who get the biggest cheer are PFLAG, because they're parents who have opened their hearts to their own kids and to other kids. So what I feel at the Pride Parade is that it is about people loving each other and including each other and saying, you're all okay. Whoever you are, you're okay. And that's a Canadian message.
Right. And you know, when you first ran, being openly gay was something that you thought would be a barrier for you.
So I first ran in 1994 to be a school trustee in North Toronto, and I had what I call my Norma Ray conversation with my kids. You know, I got them up and we sat down and said, they're going to say bad things about your mama. Right. And that was kind of the way we went into politics. There was no point in Jane and me pretending that somehow we were living other than we were. And so from the outset, that was who we were. And, you know, more than I thought it was going to be an issue, it was consistently raised at every juncture. You can't win in that riding. You should move to Toronto Danforth. I don't live in Toronto Danforth. I live in Toronto. Right. You know, you're too whatever. You're too gay. You're too woman. You're too whatever. You live in the wrong neighborhood. So it was always an issue, whether it was running for a nomination or whether it was running for the office. But I had to filter out those voices, and I had to decide two things. I had to decide that I was going to go for it, and I had to decide that I had a plan B. But I think that's true of all politicians. When you run, you have to be prepared to lose for whatever reason, and you have to be prepared to get on with your life. And I think that's, in terms of messages to whether it's women or to anyone thinking about politics, go for it, go as hard as you can, filter out the voices that are, you know, gratuitously negative, build your team, go to win, and then be prepared to have a plan B. That's the way I've gotten through this.
And do you think that it's, you know, we've come a long way since then, or do you think that things have gotten better, that you've opened the door?
I think we've come a long way. You know, probably the strongest voices were when I was running for the leadership of the party, and there were people who were my close supporters coming to me and saying, please don't run because you can't win a general election, right? And I said, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to make my speech at the convention. I'm going to talk to the Liberal Party, and they're going to make a decision about whether I can win a general election. And you know what? Yeah. We did, because that's who we are as a Liberal Party.
And I think one of the greatest things about Canada is that we've been able to maintain that progress with, you know, the LGBT issues that are of our time. So in the U.S., obviously, gay marriage is now legal, but it hasn't been a long time, and actually there's been a big backlash. There's been more anti-gay laws that have been proposed after gay marriage was passed.
Because that's the fear, right?
Exactly.
Whoa, they're going to take over.
What would be, I guess, your women and gays.
Women and gays. Oh, and a gay woman. Oh,
right, exactly. The worst. But so how do you preserve that progress? Like, what would be your advice to the U.S. or
my advice to the U.S.?
Yeah, just
concerning
Donald
that.
Trump? Yeah. Sorry. Okay, that's a good way to start.
Well, I'm not going to presume to give advice to the U.S. I think I can give advice to ourselves. Just to go back to your first comment about the Wild Rose, if you follow the social media that happened after that incident in Alberta, there was a homophobic thing that happened online about, you know, whatever, however I identify, whatever. That's the reality. We have to understand that, yes, we've come a long way. We've come a hugely long way in Canada, but we're not there. You know, we're not there in terms of every child in every schoolyard feeling safe, feeling included. We can't assume that everyone has the information that they need to understand difference and to not be afraid. So I think the advice to us is, let's just keep being who we are, but be vocal, you know, step up and say what we need to say in all of our communities, because all our kids aren't safe. There are still people who will come to the Pride Parade in Toronto. They are closeted in their communities. They're not out to their families. They will come to Pride, and it is the one time when they can either walk down the street holding hands or they can feel free to be who they are. That's in Canada in 2016, so we need to be aware of that, and I think we need to say that to ourselves. And if we say that to ourselves, then we'll be the beacon that the United States, they'll all move here if Trump is elected. They'll just move everyone.
We had Americans begging the Prime Minister to run.
Yeah, I know, on bended knee.
He was shaking them off. Je vais terminer avec une question sur les femmes autochtones. Vous avez investi $100 million.
I'll end with a question on Native women. You've invested $100 million. Why? Because if we're talking about women who need rights and services, we must speak about Native women, because violence against women is most serious with Native women, Indigenous women, and I'm quite proud to have people working at that level with them to level the playing field. We have a history that is not just unfair, and we need something to change that.
And thank you you were a great crowd.
Awesome.
And
Thanks, everybody.